Hey everybody, what's going on? Dr. Jeff May here with a delayed episode. We get it. It's summer, Dr. Jeff. We know everybody gets busy, but I apologize. It's been a minute since I've been behind the podcast mic, but that means there is more to say and share. And ultimately, the purpose here at Doctor's Orders is to give you advice that truly is going to change some aspect of your life when you put it into practice. And so in today's episode, I'm going to share with you an experience I had less than a week ago where we threatened 9 grown men to throw them out of a helicopter. Yes, that's right. We threatened to throw them out of a helicopter on the way to Catalina Island in Orange County, California. It's a great story. You want to make sure you like, comment, share as we dive into this. But let me give you a little backstory with this. So I am blessed enough to be part of a coaching team that warriorweek.com for businessmen who essentially at some point of their life have lost their edge, whether it's in their family, in their business, in their faith, in their journey, in what it means to stand for something, and especially as a man. And so it's been a powerful experience, an experience I went through a couple years ago, and now I'm on the coaching team, and we get to help men specifically face the stories in their lives that they're telling themselves, reveal the lies, and then get them moving forward. And so it revolves heavily, as you can imagine, in around action. And so this last week, part of the event, we're taking them out to Catalina Island in helicopters, and it's just a powerful experience on helping them face fears. And a beautiful thing when we face fears, we get better. You know, it says 365 times in the Bible. Ironically, one time for every day of the year, God says, do not fear. And yet when we face fear, inevitably have fears and face it, that's where we grow. And it's important to realize this. You know, fear, there's an acronym that somebody came up with that says face everything and rise. The FEAR, face everything and rise, is something that sometimes people reference fear to. Well, they're flat out, there's times in my life where I know I've feared things and I've absolutely ran. I remember being scared of the dark when I was a little kid, where you'd shut off the light and you'd run in as fast as you could and jump into bed. And having those things, and a lot of this stemming out of a couple nights ago at the time of this recording, we as a team had a neuropathy dinner event where there's 24, 25 people in attendance. There's many, many people dealing with neuropathy. Their spouses were there. It was a fantastic night here locally in Jordan, and we were able to see the fears in people's eyes and knowing and walking people through reversing their neuropathy. And that's not the point of this episode, but having something as devastating as neuropathy to someone's quality of life. Essentially, if you don't know, neuropathy is simply nerve damage. It's nerve damage. Most people associate it with diabetes, but there's over 100 different causes. And so one of the things that happens is that you lose your proprioception or your balance. Falls are inevitable. 10% of falls a year are fatal. And people there's 1 out of 3 people over the age of 65 will fall at least once every year. And a majority of people don't talk to their healthcare providers about it. So when we look at this, like taking away your health freedoms, I spoke about that a few weeks ago, in terms of saying, okay, well, now we've got this thing called neuropathy. I've got pins and needles and burning and numbing. I can't walk anymore. The pain at night, the bed sheets actually hurt my feet, all of these things. And you can see the fear. And that's the point of this episode, is to address this fear and saying, okay, well, how do we battle fear? How do we clarify? How do we, quote unquote, turn the lights back on in certain areas of our life and give us that confidence and certainty to actually take some action? Because in absence of action, fear will ruin the day. Like fear will fill the gaps in our thoughts and the dead spaces between our words. And as we look at this, fear ultimately will and can, if you allow it, dictate the quality of your life. And so one of the things learning after this weekend and going through is that fear is going to be inevitable. Fear is going to be inevitable, but this is how you make sure that facing your specific fear, and it may be something where you're afraid of a heart attack, you're afraid of high blood pressure, you're afraid of, I'm not going to be able to go for the walk because I might blow out my back, like whatever it may be, and it may seem insignificant to some. Here's the thing, your fear may seem insignificant insignificant. It may seem small. You know what? It may seem small. Apologize for my verbiage, but guess what? I'm not perfect either. And so it may seem small and you may be like, well, it's not that big a deal. And you start to minimize your fear. You can't minimize fear. Minimize fear is like feeding a fire. It just grows. It grows bigger and bigger when you try and minimize it. Your fear is your fear. So step one of this episode is fear is your fear. It is what it is. It is what it is. And that once you clarify that, then you're able to face it. And you say, okay, now I'm at a crossroads. And here's the thing. When you even take that first step of saying, okay, this is my fear and clarifying it, now you can work with something. You can't necessarily just work with feelings that you haven't clarified. You need to get some facts around your feelings. And as you move forward and you start to lean into that, you start to see, okay, well, maybe this isn't as bad. Maybe this isn't as big and scary as I thought. I turned the lights on and there was no monster underneath my bed. And you look at that. So your fear is your fear. You face that. The next step is you've got to say, okay, well, what's next? You've got to get to not necessarily why. A lot of people will have the why questions creep up. And why questions a lot of times are deep, dark caverns and rabbit holes that you will go down and we may never see you again. You really should just get to a what question. So when you face fear, what's next is going to be step 2. So step 2 is what's next. You got to figure out what you need to do. And if you freeze at this step, facing your fear is a big milestone in your life. Just even you getting this far in the episode, listening to me is a milestone. And you got to understand a milestone will turn into a tombstone if you stop moving. And that's what happens. That's what happens with a lot of people. They're like, that's too big. It's, and part of them dies. And now we have a tombstone where there should be a milestone of you overcoming fear. We have a tombstone of where you laid down and died to fear. And that's a problem. And so many times in our lives, we cover it up or we're like, I tried to lose weight. I tried to, get healthier, get stronger, and you stop doing what it took to get there because you let the fear win, and now that's a tombstone in your life that you have to lug around, and you don't even want to talk about it with certain people. People want to talk to you about it, and they don't know how to talk to it, and it may be a sore subject in around family dinner conversations. I've seen this for 15, almost 16 years, and so I want step number 2. Asking a what's next question is like, where do you need to take action? If you need help, contact the office. We help people every single day of the week. And even on the weekends when I'm answering messages and doing those things and helping people and being able to give people real hope and real answers. After the dinner talk a couple nights ago, a gentleman said, you know what? Hey, I'm going to come into your office. I'm going to get my exam, not because of any of the facts you shared, but do you really think you can help me? And I said, I don't know yet, but let's find out. Let's find out. The what's next for that guy is get an exam. Get an exam so we don't have to worry about feelings. We can get some facts and we can move forward. And the third step is don't look back. The third step is don't look back. In fact, don't look back and maybe keep your mouth shut. And here's why I say this. Is because a lot of times when you start moving in a direction, those around you who care for you, who love you, will sabotage. Will try and sabotage you. It's like unknown to them. A lot of times they'll try and sabotage you along your way to getting better. And it's not because they don't want to see it. Sometimes it makes them feel insecure. And we got the old crabs in the bucket analogy. If you got a bunch of crabs in a 5-gallon bucket and one starts to go for the top, the other crabs will pull it down. And you'll see this time and time again displayed in and amongst people. Someone in your family is starting to make health changes and, maybe the wife started to make changes and maybe the husband was like, why are you doing that? Like, why can't we just eat how we always eat? I don't like it, and all of a sudden it starts to minimize it and tear it down. So why I say don't look back and keep your mouth shut is because actions speak louder than words. You don't have to share with someone else necessarily your ambition, your target, your what's next, that second step. You don't have to tell them what you're going to do. You can go out there and do it, and knowing you're moving in a positive direction, eventually people follow you. Eventually, yes, your family you've been praying for, the people in your life, your friends that you want to help get healthier. We hear it all the time in our office. I've been trying to refer this person to you for years, and they're finally coming in. That's because they were persistent and they never gave up. So a real quick recap when we look at this is that you really need to state and clarify your fear. Step 1, what are you afraid of? What area of your life is it coming from? What are you afraid of? The second step, don't ask a why question, ask a what's next question. So what are you going to do about it? And number 3, don't look back and keep your mouth shut. You want to make sure you move in a positive direction. You don't need to tell anybody. There was the I think there's a parable in the Bible where a woman's son has died, and she was like rushing out because I think Elisha or Elijah, one of the two, were in the area, and she like rode out there, and on the way she met like a soldier or someone along the way, and they're like, hey, is everything good? Do you need help? And she's like, yeah, it's fine. She didn't tell that person because that person couldn't do anything for her. She may that person that they encountered may have just said, well, your son's dead, like forget about it. But instead she went out and she kept persisting, and she did what she needed to do. She figured out what she needed to do. She kept her mouth shut, and then when she got to where she actually could take action on it, and her son lived. So it's a beautiful story and a reminder not to throw your pearls before swine. I'm not saying your family's swine, but there's people that just don't need to know. You don't need to go out on Facebook and be like, starting my weight loss journey. Do it for you. Do it for you. And so I want to really encourage you guys to like, comment, share, put this stuff into place. It's a beautiful thing to be back behind this microphone. It's a beautiful thing for you to be listening. And I am just blessed every single day that we're able to do this. Remember, tomorrow is never promised. Take action on this episode, and those are your doctor's orders.